Total chaos. No way to see the race. Not even the track. Nobody cares. Big lines at the outdoor betting windows. Then stand back to watch winning numbers flash up on the big board like a giant bingo game. Old blacks arguing about bets. Hold on there, I'll handle this. Waving pint of whiskey, fistful of dollar bills. Girl riding piggyback. T-shirt says stolen from Fort Lauderdale jail. Thousands of teenagers. Group singing, "Let the sun shine in." 10 soldiers guarding the American flag and a huge fat drunk wearing a blue football jersey, number 80, reeling around with quart of beer in hand. No booze sold out here. Too dangerous. No bathrooms either. Muscle Beach. Woodstock. Too many cops with riot sticks, but no sign of a riot. Far across the track, the clubhouse looks like a postcard from the Kentucky Derby. We went back to the clubhouse to watch the big race. When the crowd stood to face the flag and sing My Old Kentucky Home, Stedman faced the crowd and sketched frantically. Somewhere up in the boxes a voice screeched, "Turn around, you hairy freak!" The race itself was only 2 minutes long, and even from our super status seats and using 12-hour glasses, there was no way to see what was really happening to our horses. Holy Land, Ralph's choice, stumbled and lost his jockey in the final turn. Mine, Silent Screen, had the lead coming into the stretch and faded in the fifth in the finish. The winner was a 16-1 shot named Dust Commander. Moments after the race was over, the crowd surged wildly for the exits, rushing for cabs and buses. The next day's Courier told of violence in the parking lots. People were punched and trampled, pockets were picked, children lost, bottles hurled. But we missed all this, having retired to the press box for a bit of post-race drinking. By this time, we'd both gone half crazy from too much whiskey, sun fatigue, culture shock, lack of sleep, and general dissolution. We hung around the press box long enough to watch a mass interview with the winning owner, a dapper little man named Lehman, who said he'd just been flown into Louisville that morning from Nepal, where he'd bagged a record tiger. The sports writers murmured their admiration, and a waiter filled Lehman's glass with Chivas Regal. He just won $127,000 with a horse that cost him $6,500 2 years ago. His occupation, he said, was retired contractor, and then he added with a big grin, "I just retired." The rest of the day blurs into madness. The rest of that night, too, for that matter. And all the next day and night. Such horrible things occurred that I can't bring myself to even think about them now, much less put them down in print. I was lucky to get out at all. One of my clearest memories of that entire vicious time was Ralph being attacked by one of my old friends in the billiard room of the Dennis Club in downtown Louisville on Saturday night. The man had ripped off his own shirt open to the waist before deciding that Ralph was after his wife. No blows were struck, but the emotional effects were massive. Then, as a sort of final horror, Stedman put his fiendish pen to work and tried to patch things up by doing a little sketch of the girl he'd been accused of hustling. That finished us in the Pendennis. Sometime around 10:30 in the morning, I was awakened by a scratching on the door. I leaned out of my bed and pulled out the curtain back far enough to be able to see Stedman outside. "What do you want, man?" I said. "What about breakfast?" he said. I lunged out of bed and tried to open the door, but it caught on the night chain and banged shut again. I couldn't cope with the chain. The thing wouldn't come out of the track, so I ripped it out the wall at a vicious jerk on the door. Ralph didn't blink. "Bad luck," he muttered. I could barely see him. My eyes were so swollen and almost shut. The sudden burst of sunlight through the door must have stunned me and left me helpless, like a sick mole. Stedman was mumbling about sickness and terrible heat. I fell back on the bed and tried to focus on him. as he moved around the room in a very distracted way for a few moments, then suddenly darted over to the beer bucket and seized the Colt 45. "Christ," I said, "you're getting out of control." He nodded and ripped the cap off, taking a long drink. "Do you know this place is really awful?" he said finally. "I must get out of this place." He shook his head nervously. "The plane leaves at 3:30, but I don't know if I'll be able to make it." I barely heard him. My eyes had finally opened enough for me to be able to focus on the mirror across the room, and I was stunned at the shock of recognition. For a confused instant, I thought that Ralph had brought somebody with him, a model for that one special face we'd been looking for. There he was, by God, a puffy, drink-ravaged, disease-ridden caricature, like an awful cartoon version of an old snapshot in some once proud mother's family photo album. It was a face we'd been looking for, and of course it was my own. Horrible, horrible. "Maybe I should sleep for a while longer," I said. "Why don't you go down to the fish meat place and go eat some of this rotten fish and chips and come back and give me around noon? I feel too near death to hit the streets in this hour." He shook his head. No. I think I'll go back upstairs and work on those drawings for a while." He leaned down to fetch 2 more cans out of the beer bucket. "I tried to work earlier," he said. "My hands kept trembling. Terrible, terrible." "You gotta stop this drinking," I said. He nodded. "I know this is no good at all, but for some reason it makes me feel better." "Not for long," I said. "You probably collapse into some kind of hysterical DTs tonight. Probably by the time you get off the plane at Kennedy, they'll zip you up in a straitjacket and drag you down the Tombs and kidneys and big sticks until you strain out. You understand?" He shrugged and wandered out, pulling the door shut behind him. I went back to bed for another hour or so, and later, after the daily grapefruit juice run to the Night Owl Food Mart, we had our last meal at the Fish Meat Village, a fine lunch of dough and butcher's offal, fried in heavy grease. By this time, Ralph wouldn't order a coffee. He kept asking for more water. "It's the only thing they have fit for human consumption," he explained. And an hour or so to kill before he had to catch the plane, he spread his drawings on the table and pondered them for a while, wondering if he'd caught his proper spirit of the thing, but we couldn't make up our minds. His hands were shaking so badly that he had trouble holding the paper, and my vision was so blurred that I could barely see what the hell he'd drawn. "Shit," I said. "Both look like worse than anything you draw here." He smiled. "I've been thinking about that," he said. "We came down here to see this terrible scene, people getting pissed out of their minds and vomiting on themselves and all that, and now, you know what? It's us." Huge Pontiac ballbuster blowing through traffic on the expressway. A radio news bulletin says the National Guard is massacring students at Kent State, and Nixon is still bombing Cambodia. The journalist is driving, ignoring his passenger, who is now clearly naked after taking off most of his clothing, which he holds out the window, trying to wind-wash the mace out of it. His eyes are bright red, and his face and chest are soaked with beer he's been using to rinse the awful chemical off his flesh. The front of his woolen trousers soaked with vomit. His body is racked with fits of coughing and wild choking sobs. Wild choking sobs. The journalist rams the big car through traffic and into a spot in front of the terminal. Then he reaches over to open the door on the passenger side and shoves the Englishman out, snarling, "Bug off, you fucking worthless faggot! You twisted pig fucker! If I kick your ass all the way to the bowling green, you cum-sucking foreign geek makes it too good for you. We can do without your kind in Kentucky."